This is the ESBR review show. We are back on Sunday morning after Pacquiao Ugas. Once again, I'm joined by Elliot of Eat, Sleep, Box and Repeat. Elliot, how are we?
Yeah, really good. Thanks, mate. Really good. Enjoyed going to a small hall show last night at York Hall for the first time in 18 months. And then didn't stay up to watch Pacquiao Ugas, but watched it this morning. And was what it was. How are you doing?
Yeah, really good, thank you. And it's good to see like media and people back at boxing, especially small hall shows at York Hall. So and obviously we should have had one of the biggest fights of the year last night with Pacquiao Spence. Obviously everyone knows what happened there, and instead we still got a good fight with Pacquiao Ugas. I think it was probably a better fight than a lot of people predicted. Obviously Ugas came out with the victory, with the unanimous decision victory, 116 116 112s and 115 113, which I haven't seen many people argue with at all with those cards. What did you make of the fight overall?
Yeah, I think the first thing I want to say is that it's nice seeing upsets in the sport. Every sport needs upsets, otherwise nobody would watch it. So it's always refreshing when you get a main event and with a decision that people weren't expecting. I feel like boxing is quite unique, not unique in that sense, but you get that more in boxing than you do in other sports. Maybe I'm slightly biased. On the fight itself, I'm a massive Pacquiao fan, so this is a tough one for me. It was Pacquiao was Pacquiao. He was still doing what he could do, just not as good. And I feel like Ugas, it was kind of Ugas's time last night and just kind of took advantage of Pacquiao not being as quick, not being as reactive to how he was 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. As you said, Ugas won the fight. It was a close fight on points, but it was one of those where it was definitely close, but it was definitely Ugas who won the fight. It was a bit sad because obviously we're all aware of Pacquiao's age, and I feel like for a 42-year-old to be doing what he's doing is incredible. But at the same time, it was very much a 42-year-old Manny Pacquiao. You could tell the difference between Pacquiao from last night and Pacquiao from, the Timothy Bradley fights or the Marquez fights or the Morales fights. Bit of a sad one, and it is what it is. I think that'll probably be it for that man.
Yeah, and we will get into the future of both fighters later in the show. But I think the two things that I took away most from this, I think you've got to have a lot of respect for Pacquiao. Actually, I know a lot of people were saying about Ugas taking this fight on 11 days' notice, but for Pacquiao to take this fight on 11 days' notice, it's a big change from Errol Spence. They're different styles. Ugas has one of the most awkward styles in the welterweight division, and we saw that again last night. So for Pacquiao, he would have had to change quite a bit, and maybe if he'd have had a full camp, we'd have seen a different thing. Maybe if Ugas had a full camp, we'd have seen a bigger win. But I do respect Pacquiao quite a lot for taking this fight and not just cancelling the whole event. I think a lot of other fighters in his situation would have looked at Ugas, and it's kind of a lose-lose situation. You lose and everyone goes, oh, it's the great Pacquiao times. Father times reared its head again, but instead we're here with Ugas winning, and that's again the other side of the situation. I also think Ugas didn't get enough respect in the build-up. Maybe that was because it was only 11 days' notice, but he is still ranked in the top 5 by Ring Magazine in the welterweight division. He is still the WBA belt, which he retained last night, holder. So he isn't just a random welterweight. I know the casual fans might not know who he is, and a lot of boxing fans probably forgot about him even holding that belt. But let's respect a bit for Ugas, what he's done previously. And I think he showed again last night why he is one of the top fighters in the welterweight division. He isn't a big name, but he is, on talent-wise, he is still up there with the likes of the Crawfords, the Spencers. He has kind of solidified himself, maybe not in the commercial value of those guys, but I think talent-wise, he definitely is in that kind of conversation. I think the big question that comes out of last night's fight, Elliot, is whether Pacquiao's age was the biggest factor or whether Ugas was just too talented and too good for Pacquiao on the night. What camp are you kind of in?
Oh, it's a tricky one, and I think my honest answer is that it's a bit of a mixture of both.
Yeah,
I think, in my opinion, the Pacquiao of the past I think he would have won. I think he would have been too much Ugas, but I don't. When a fighter wins and wins fairly and clearly, I don't want to take anything away from them. So I do think it was a mix. It was a mixture of both. I think, as you said, Ugas was just a bit, I don't know, disrespected, underrated by a lot of people. I think a lot of people maybe hadn't heard of him or didn't really know a lot about him. It's just kind of assumed Pacquiao was just going to wipe the floor with him, and that was never really going to happen. Ugas is, he is a very good fighter. If you look what he's done the last couple of years, he's fought some very good fighters and done really well against them. So yeah, in short, I think it was a bit of both, personally.
Yeah, I think my only argument for it being Pacquiao's age was those first 6 rounds were quite close. I think I had it 3-3 going into the 7th. So, and then Ugas kind of took over in the later rounds and kind of showed his dominance a bit more. So maybe that was and I know Ugas's camp in the build-up spoke about that Pacquiao didn't look as fit as previous, whether that was the 2-year layoff or whatever. They did say that, look, in the second half of the fight, we are going to take over and really dominate, and Ugas did. But I also do think it was predominantly the skill of Ugas which won in that fight. We spoke myself and Paul in the preview show about Ugas' style and how he's this long, big welterweight, 5'9", like big reach compared to Manny, but he fights quite close and he actually fights in the pocket, and his guard was so good all night. Like Pacquiao would have hurt people with some of the shots that he was throwing, but that tight guard in close and throwing off that jab and hitting to the body, really just Pacquiao couldn't really deal with that, especially later in the fight. I do think that right hand to the body is what won him the fight in general. Yeah. And I was looking at CompuBox this morning at some of the stats, and Ugas, I think, landed 58% of his power punches, which is going to win you the fight. Not many fighters get over 50%, and if you do land over 50% of your power punches, you probably have won. So I think that kind of brings us to the future for both fighters. So we'll start with the legend Manny Pacquiao. There's been a lot of speculation in the build-up. Obviously, the political campaign that he will or will not have in 2022. I think, what would you like to see Pacquiao do next?
I would like to see him retire next. I think he's done so much in the sport. You probably don't need me to go on some sort of monologue about what he's done the last 20 odd years. 8 weight divisions, had various fights that he's lost and then come back to win the rematch. That's one of the things that really impresses me about his career. Like Timothy Bradley beat him twice. Morales had 4 fights against Marquez. So I think there's been times in the past I would have liked to seen him retire. I think the Mayweather fight, the 3rd Bradley fight are both examples when it would have been a good time to retire, but for whatever reason, he's decided to fight on, and he's come back and he's fought the likes of Broner, Keith Thurman, who, whether you rate those guys or not, they're much younger than him, much fresher than him, and he's beaten both of them quite convincingly at the age of 39, 40, which I think that's incredible. So yeah, I think I don't know what else. Why would he fight on now? Like, I don't want to really see him lose another fight. I don't want to see him get hurt. And there comes a point where he is 42, and yeah, the only way I can see him fighting again would be if it was some sort of kind of farewell fight, which I don't really want to see. I don't really want to see that. So I don't really want to see him kind of come up against an opponent that's kind of tailor-made for him, that everyone who isn't very good and everyone kind of knows he's going to win. Like, that might be quite nice if you're a diehard Filipino, but personally, I would still want to see him in a competitive fight if he was to fight again. So yeah, that's my opinion. I think it's clearly the right time to do it. And watch the post-fight press conference, and the reaction is that it looks like that's going to happen now. And as you mentioned, my knowledge on politics in the Philippines is quite limited, but I think if he's running for president, then it's a bit of a reaction to kind of being in a training camp whilst trying to run for president as well. So yeah, I think and I hope that he's going to retire now.
Yeah, and obviously if he does run and win, I actually think it would be quite cool to see a president fighting. I think that'd be quite something a bit different. But yeah, I'm kind of in the same camp. I don't think he should fight a top welterweight again. I don't think that's I just can't see him beating any of those top names. It's easy to say after that fight, look what Spence would have done to him, but Spence is kind of a different style of fighter. But I suppose Spence does have the power as well that Ugas doesn't have, and he still is quite an awkward style. So it's quite easy to say in hindsight, look, Spence would have walked over him, but we'll probably never know. The only thing I thought after last night, the only fight which I actually think makes some kind of sense, and I know a lot of people won't like this, but it's a fight that's been talked about before, and it's the Conor McGregor fight. I think that if you look at what Mayweather's kind of laid the platform for what to do in semi-retirement, I think if he went on to fight someone like Mayweather, it's going to be a huge fight. It's going to sell big. It might even help his political run. It's not. You aren't fighting the Errol Spencers, the Terence Crawfords, even the Broners and the Thurmans. You're fighting a guy who's had one pro boxing fight, who's coming off multiple losses in the UFC as well. So I actually think Pacquiao McGregor is actually quite an interesting fight. I know people probably hate me for this or say whatever they want, but that is kind of, if he's going to fight again, I kind of hope he doesn't. But if he does, I do think that McGregor fight could be one as a kind of farewell, where it's kind of like a semi hard fight, but also Pacquiao would probably be the favorite as well. So yeah, and that's the only thing I'd kind of like to see him in.
Yeah, it would be. I wouldn't rule it out just because the amount of money, and I think part of the reason why McGregor Mayweather happened, just because I don't think either fighter could turn down that amount of money. No. And now you've said it. I wouldn't rule it out. Like, do I want to see it? Not really. Would I stay up till 5 a.m. to watch it? Probably not. But I can see it happening. I think the only thing that I would be interested in is what weight would that fight be at? Just because I've always thought Pacquiao's not really a welterweight. Pacquiao could probably still make kind of lightweight if he wanted to,
and it'd probably have to be at 154,
which would make it interesting. But I don't really want to see Pacquiao up at that weight if you consider how small he is and what weight he used to fight at.
And you also can't see McGregor. I know in his early UFC career he was a 145, but I don't think he can make that now. He's fought at 170 most recently, and I think 155 is probably his best weight. So maybe meeting at 154. I think maybe if we're going too in depth into it, but I think as you say, it's the money, and whether Pacquiao actually is motivated by money, I don't know. Maybe he's not. He probably has enough. But whether it's also kind of just, I think also that Mayweather fight happened because McGregor started goading him and kind of started talking, and kind of the way he does. I don't know if it holds the same weight now because of what's happened most recently, but he kind of gets people to believe in him, even when there's no chance. People believed he would beat Mayweather. People still believe he'd beat Khabib if they fight again. McGregor can sell this story, and I think Pacquiao with his greatness could sell that as well. Yeah. So that is the only fight that I would kind of want to see Pacquiao in again.
The only point I would make to that, Sam, is still a massive fight. McGregor's still a massive name. I just think that since the Mayweather fight, he's lost, is it 3 fights in the UFC, I believe? Yeah. And I'm not sure that area of kind of not invincibility, because he lost before Mayweather as well, but I don't know if as many people would buy into this idea that he would beat Manny Pacquiao.
Yeah, I think maybe if he had one more UFC fight, won that, came off the back of that, and then you go into this as but you're looking at probably Pacquiao would be 43 by then, middle 43s, and the logistics of it aren't there. But I think I think they could both sell it. I think people would still watch it. I think you'd need the build up that Maymac had, where it was they're going on world tours, selling out press conferences. I don't think it would be as big as that first fight because, as you said, McGregor doesn't have kind of that aura about him anymore, and it is kind of sad to see that he has lost a little bit of this. But I still think Pacquiao could sell a fight. So yeah, that was my only. But I would like to see him retire and maybe go into politics and do whatever he needs to do in the Philippines.
We will see.
So that brings us on to the other side of the fight, and Ugas. Obviously, he is the WBA champion. There are some quite good unification fights. Obviously, he doesn't hold a lot. His name kind of feels like it still doesn't hold too much weight. Whereabouts do you fit him in those welterweight rankings, and what would you like to see him do next?
Yeah, I think Ugas is 35 and he's not been in kind of major fights in his career. So I imagine he's going to just be looking for the biggest fights possible. He's not an unbeaten fighter, so he's not going to be scared to lose. I think he's just going to kind of go for it. So yeah, I mean, people are talking. I know he spoke about fighting Errol Spence after the fight last night, but Errol Spence looks like he's got a pretty bad injury. So
I don't know if he's even going to fight again.
Yeah, exactly. Point. So in my opinion, I'd deter away from that fight for the time being. Spence, as you said, he might not fight again. B, if he is going to fight again, when's that going to be? Like this time next year? We don't really know. Not really sure what's going on with Terence Crawford at the moment.
The Virgil Ortiz fight is
which is a great fight, by the way. Yeah. Which off subject, but I really hope that fight happens. So then I just feel like if I was him, I'd kind of just look at the BoxRec rankings and work and just see what the biggest fight available is. Another point I make is that Ugas has been a pro for over 10 years and he's always fought at welterweight. Looking at him, I think he'll continue to do that. I don't see him moving up, moving down.
No, I don't think he could move down. To be honest, I think he's a big welterweight, isn't he?
Exactly. So I've not really given you I appreciate I've not really given you an answer there. The only fight I wouldn't mind seeing, I don't know if, is potential the Sean Porter rematch, a fight that was very close a couple of years ago. And I think that's a big fight. Obviously, he's got a world title now, which might appeal to Sean Porter. Saying that, Sean Porter's not fought for a while, and I'm not sure
where he's at.
Sure what his immediate plans are. I know he was on doing some punditry last night with Keith Thurman. But yeah, that's a fight that I'd like to see is the rematch against Sean Porter for sure.
Yeah, one thing is I think you're going to struggle to see Ugas in a pay-per-view fight next. I think he doesn't hold the weight. His name doesn't hold the weight. I think only if it's a big unification fight, you'll see him on pay-per-view again. They've spoken about people like Danny Garcia. To me, not a massive fight. I don't think the Sean Porter fight is a massive fight. I do think Ugas probably beats them both. Just because of his style. I think he's so awkward. I think he causes most of his welterweight problems. I do think he also needs to be quite active to kind of gain that like little bit of like momentum from this fight. I don't know. Obviously, there was the reports of the bicep injury, but in the fight, it looked like nothing. So if there was, I didn't see it. So yeah, I think he's got to try and keep this momentum going. I think if you look at like Jeff Horn, whether you think he won that fight or not, he's kind of gone under the radar a bit, and he didn't kind of take advantage of that, of beating Pacquiao. It's kind of the weight that comes along with it. And I think Ugas, obviously, he has the WBA belt. There's some interesting fights, but I think you'll probably see the majority of the big names kind of stay away from him.
Yeah, for sure. I think one name that's just gone into my head with like my British boxing fan brain on is Conor Benn, who I think holds one of the WBA Continental, one of the belts, basically.
I'm so bored about talking to WBA on this.
Yeah, exactly. I just wonder, he fights Adrian Granados in 2 weeks' time. If he wins that fight, I don't know where he's ranked with the WBA. I don't care to look at those sort of things. But if he wins that fight, surely post-fight he's going to be asked, "Could you fight Ugas next?" And I don't know. Could that fight happen? I wouldn't rule it out.
Yeah, and obviously, one thing we haven't mentioned was Josh Taylor was spoken about for Pacquiao. Could Josh Taylor come and fight Ugas? I think that would be quite a big fight, especially if it was in the UK. I don't know if it's the most exciting fight in the world. I don't know if people would be that buzzing for it, but
I think personally, Josh Taylor is. I think he's only going to vacate belts at 140 or just move away from 140 if there's the massive fight at 147. I think he wants Crawford personally. I think that's the fight he wants. So I personally don't see that. Happening. I think if Pacquiao had one last night, I could see that. I could have definitely seen that fight happening. That would have
Yeah,
been massive. But
I just don't know if that would be big for Pacquiao. That's the thing. I don't know if that holds the
maybe
same.
not. Did you
Josh
see
Taylor,
that?
I think it was Freddie Roach, wasn't it? When asked about Josh Taylor, he just said who. Whether that was kind of tongue in cheek or what, I don't know. I think he probably does know. Knowing Freddie Roach's knowledge on boxing, I think he definitely knows who Josh Taylor is.
Yeah, it was the fact that Freddie Roach like had a mask on when he answered this, and I feel like if he hadn't had a mask on, he wouldn't have been able to keep a straight face when he was. And like, could you imagine if like saying to a boxing trainer, "Do you know who like the unified, like the undisputed flyweight champion is?" Then be like, "No, I don't know who." Yeah, no, I haven't heard of him. Yeah, it was a bit tongue in cheek. I enjoy that sort of banter. I found it quite funny, but at the same time, it's a bit of a strange thing to say when your fighter could potentially be fighting that guy next.
Unless he was trying to build that up. I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't put it past anyone in boxing to try and promote a potential fight, even if it's not even been made yet. Yes, I think that rounds off this review show. It's been quite a short one. Obviously, there wasn't much on apart from that fight last night. There was no UK fights. Next week we'll be back with the BT Sport fight. And also probably the Jake Paul Tyron Woodley fight. I think we will be previewing that on Tuesday. Whether you like it or not, it's kind of quite a big fight. So we will be back next week with a review show. We'll also have 2 prediction videos going out from Greg on Monday tomorrow, and obviously the big preview on Tuesday as always. So yeah, thank you, Elliot, for joining us this week on the ESBR recap. It's been great to have you, and we'll see you guys later.
Cheers, mate. Really enjoyed it.